Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. When will I find God? Many devotees have asked this question because worldly goals require time. Let me say it all again. When will I find God? Many devotees have asked this question. Because worldly goals require time usually for their fulfillment, we imagine time to be a factor on the spiritual path. And so it is, but only because we think it is. God is as much with us now as he ever will be. It is not he who needs to come to us, but we who need to come to him. And that process of coming is a matter of transforming our self-perception. In the Gospel of St. John, chapter 4, Christ says, "Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh the harvest. Behold, I say unto you now, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest." There is a practical teaching in these words. Apart from their statement that we have God already and have only to realize that truth, Jesus is saying, lift up your eyes and look. To hold the eyes uplifted is the best position for meditation. For the seat of superconsciousness lies at a point midway between the eyebrows in the frontal lobe of the brain, just behind that point. This point is also known as the Christ Center. By lifting up your eyes and concentrating there, you will find it easier to enter the state of ecstasy. That is why saints in every religion have often been observed during states of deep inner communion with their eyes uplifted, focused on the inner light, white, as Jesus said, already to harvest. The Bhagavad Gita goes further into this meditative teaching in the 6th chapter. Holding the spine firm, the neck and head erect and motionless, let the yogi focus his eyes at the starting place of the nose, the point between the eyebrows. Let not his gaze roam elsewhere. In meditation, tell yourself, I already have God. I am alive forever in the divine light. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
So, one of the many wonderful aphorisms of Yogananda is that happiness is a choice, and that you can only make that choice if you're completely focused or absorbed, you might say, in the here and now. And in fact, I'd like to quote 2 verses from the poem Samadhi, which can be found in the Whispers from Eternity, as well as in the Autobiography of a Yogi. But today I'll say Whispers because we are sort of encouraged always to use the whispers in our Sunday services. So it says, present, past, future, no more for me. But ever-present, all-flowing I everywhere. Present, past, future, no more for me. But ever-present, all-flowing I everywhere. Now, I have to admit that I've always had a little difficulty with these verses, because I was thinking, my God, this my I, having to be everywhere, what a trial, what a terrible torture that is me for many people who have to undergo my presence everywhere. But then I realized, of course, I had to go deeper. It's still a little bit difficult, but I'm working on it, going a little bit deeper, and realizing that it's not my subjective I, my immature ego, that is going to be everywhere, but that this ego somehow manages gradually and ever more to feel its own presence in objective reality, that is to say, in the universe, in every person that I meet, and as far as the stars go. And then, of course, that totally changes, you might say, the ball game. Then then these become verses of intense and deep inspirations, often to be repeated, to remind ourselves. So what is it then that distracts us from being in the eternal present, in the here and now? Of course, it's the mental tendency to dwell on the past and on the future. So let's have a look at the phenomenon time then. Okay, first of all, of course, the masters are not saying, and neither is Swami, by the way, that time doesn't play an important role on the spiritual path. And just in general for human development, for human growth. Swami himself wrote a book called Education for Life, in which he speaks about the stages of maturity. And usually these things that when it regards time and cycles and so on, is usually 4. The number 4 becomes very important. So there are 4 stages of maturity, he says, from 0 to 5, to 6, when children have to develop and become comfortable living in a human body. And then from 6 to 12, when they have to develop their emotional intelligence and experience the world of imagination and feeling. From 12 to 18, well, guess what? Of course, those are the years in which teenagers have to develop their willpower. And then from 18 to 24, the last stage, the intellect, which comes last. This is interesting, and I'll leave it to you to think about that. But in any case, so there is a saying, especially time is important in biology. Swami also often quotes a dictum, an aphorism from biology, which says, nature never makes a sudden leap. We have just planted some seeds in our garden at home, and there are many seeds planted in our terra di luce, our agricultural lands here. And we know that we have to look at it and, take care of it like a mother, water it, and then enjoy watching it grow. So all these things are just a recognition that time does play an important role, and also that we have to respect that when we work on ourselves, because sometimes we become discouraged. I still haven't overcome greed, for example, when I eat. When am I going to overcome that? Well, I'll say in 1 month I'm going to work on it, and then it will be ready. Then I will be done with this tendency forever. And then, yes, you're done with it for a few days, and then your partner or whoever it is cooks you a wonderful plate, and you finish it in a few seconds. May happen. In any case, even there, you have to see that nature has its own agenda, which is not necessarily our agenda. And so we have to sort of attune ourselves to the rhythms of nature if we really want to work on ourselves with good results. So let's have a look then at the past and the future, before we get back to the present. Let's first start with the past, shall we? So there is a cafe restaurant in Dallas, Texas, and the name of that restaurant is Le Petit Madeleine. Okay? Le Petit Madeleine, the small Madeleine. Now, what is Madeleine? In France, it is a brand of cookies. So a little cookie. And the reason when you go there, they're very nice people. You can eat some French-styled cookies. You can have also the usual American cuisine, I suppose. Hash browns and things like that. But what makes it different is that the personnel, when they serve it to you, they say, "Bon appétit," because they're trained to do that. Not knowing probably what this whole thing comes from. It comes from a famous book, and as most famous books, they are read by very few people. I hardly imagine that anyone working in that cafe restaurant has actually read that book, because it's quite, I wouldn't say it's complex or something, but it takes a lot of energy and commitment to read it. It's called In Search of Lost Time by the French writer Marcel Proust. And he describes, he analyzes the phenomenon of memory. And he says, I can remember things. I could tell you easily now a story about my childhood. And so I choose to go back to those days or about my high school days or somewhere and tell you the story. Okay? But then he highlights something else, a very special experience he has when he sits with some people and they offer him a cup of tea and a few cookies of that brand La Petite Madeleine. And he dips the cookie in his tea, he tastes it, and all of a sudden he goes back, or no, it's not right to say he goes back, but some distant past experience comes up from his deep psyche, his subconscious mind, and he feels joy, and he feels, you might say, certainly some sort of increased awareness. And he tastes it, and he doesn't understand. And then, unfortunately, later on, he tries it again. He goes to the grocery, buys some cookies, he tries it again, but the experience doesn't come back. So he has to think about it, and then remember voluntarily, because this memory or this thing from the past that is present in his psyche came up without him trying to. It came up as a gift, you might say. And then he says, and then he remembers that that was the type of cookie that his grand-aunt, I don't know if that's a word, but in any case, the sister of his grandmother, gave him when he came as a little child. And he came to her room, and she would give him these cookies and say, dip them in your tea, they're very good. And so the happiness and of that experience came back to him. And when these experiences, I don't know, I think all of us experience that, have experienced that somehow, sometime. It's actually not only Proust who writes about it, but other writers as well. That you all of a sudden, something that is, I wouldn't say the past, but it's an experience that's in your subconscious mind. It comes up and it gives you sort of a happiness because it shows you the inner dimensions of that experience. So I usually have that if I take a nap in the afternoon. So I've eaten and I lie down and I sleep for 5 or 10 minutes, and just before falling asleep, or I had it when I was in Amsterdam last week and I was walking through the park and there was a little swimming pool for children, and I just remembered, oh yes, that's where Mom took me when I was a child. And I saw that swimming pool, but I saw it all of a sudden with this glow of, see it from within as children observe things. So these things are really gifts. I don't think they distract us from the eternal present. I think they help us to go deeper into it, or they teach us in any way how the child observes reality much more intensely than the adult does, because the adult is so filled with nonsense. The mind, the mental, patterns of the mind for the adults are much more settled by all the grooves in the brain. So it can also be something that is a little bit more conscious, but still something that helps. And I remember, I think it was before I had even learned to meditate, and I was traveling, and I was maybe, I started traveling very young actually. And I'd found a room in Rome in a hotel, very simple room. And I sit in front of the mirror and I start talking to God. And I say, you must come to me now. And I think I was also looking at myself in the mirror. Maybe I'd read somewhere that is also a form of meditation, where you look at yourself and you try to see the divinity or something. And so, but what I'm trying to say is that simple prayer before and the intensity of it, as I'm telling it to you, it's like it was not 30, 40 years ago, no, 40 years ago, but like right here, now, with me. The same with certain experiences that I had in meditation back in Como, where Ananda started, and where I didn't even have Kriya Yoga technique. I practiced the techniques that they had taught me, the preliminary techniques, and some very deep experiences came. And I only need to close my eyes and they come back. So again, those two are gifts. Swami Kriyananda also gives a very beautiful, well, actually, I don't know if he writes it or whether he has told people. But in the path, in any case, you can read about his early childhood, where he was with his perceptions almost more in the astral world than in the physical world, the material world. And so he could see light, beautiful light, sunsets, and it would thrill him. And he was completely, you might say, a child of God in his perceptions. And then, of course, growth continues. You become older, you become a teenager. Teenage years are, challenging for everyone, I suppose. And then he became intellectual. But then he found his guru, and who took all those layers of intellectuality and ego-affirming lifestyles, took it away from him, and those early perceptions came back. And he said it was exactly like it was, again, 1 second ago. Okay? So we can develop a nice, positive, inspiring relationship with the past if we meditate on it like that, like the experience that I told you now. What is less helpful, of course, is to dwell on the past, where you say, oh, it was so nice when we were still married. I'm just giving an example. That's the most common, no, I don't want to say that, but it's a rather common one. And, people have nostalgia, they have remorse. I've been such a terrible parent, I've made so many mistakes, and they start focusing on that. And that is not very helpful. So Yogananda says, the mind either dwells on the past with nostalgia and remorse, or on the future with hope and fear, hope and worry. That is less helpful, and there you can just tell yourself, it doesn't help other people if I become depressed of all the, the immense amount of innumerable mistakes that I've made in my life. That doesn't help anyone. A parent, his children are not helped by the parents' feelings of guilt, for example, because if they're guilty, if they have that and they dwell on it, then they become more self-centered, and so less available to their children. Isn't that so? I mean, guilt doesn't work strategically to accomplish anything good for other people, and including your children or whoever that you have offended in your life. So that doesn't help. And so there you must develop a determination. What is past is past. I'm here now, and count the blessings of the here and now. I have a guru. I have not one guru, I have 5 masters who are guiding me. A wonderful community, Ananda Sangha, wherever you are, you're part of a wonderful community. I have techniques, and I'm here. There must be something good about me that I have all this. And you count your blessings, and they will take you back to the here and now. And so another way to conquer time, because that's what we're really talking about, is to trust that meditation, regular meditation, makes you deep. And when there is depth, then time becomes ever less important. And depth comes naturally. Your consciousness becomes deep if you can create the habit of daily meditation and just, like the monkey mind says, past, future, past, future, past, future, past, future. And then, but you're also you training yourself to watch the breath that says, Om So, Om So. And that mantra through time makes you deep. And also when you're deeper, like in the ocean, you go to the ocean deeps, as we will read later on, then time becomes less important, less of a burden, you might say. So that's the past. Now let's focus on the future, all right? Probably it is good, for example, to have hopes and dreams, especially young people have hopes and dreams, they want to become this or that. It's usually about what you want to become, right? I don't know how many things I wanted to become, and nothing came of it. I think when I was a child, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I didn't become a veterinarian, and then maybe a violinist, and I did become a violinist, but not famous. I wanted fame, and it didn't come. And so it goes on and on. We all want to become something. In itself, it's good to have hopes and dreams, but it's better when you get on the path to offer those hopes and dreams up to God. And because He likes hopes and dreams. I mean, hopes and dreams have a certain enthusiasm about them, right? You're enthusiastic about life and you want to make the best of it, and the best of yourself, and the best of your own possibilities, and so on. So if you think, for example, I want to develop my voice, or my artistic abilities, or I want to become a scientist, that's fine. Then share that desire, that ambition, that hope, share it with God, and do so with faith. And say, okay, how about this, Dad? You can even call Daddy, why not? You can call Daddy or Mom or whatever. And this is what I think. And so you give to me what you think is good, but this is what I think, and then help me. And then somehow those dreams and projects and ambitions, they get the right sort of vibration. God will probably take away, inevitably take away things, and He will give you some frustration, and that frustration can encourage you to give up more to God, and then the right things, good things will just happen. It is always good to meditate on the famous aphorism of Sri Yukteswar. If you say, everything in future will improve if I make the right spiritual effort now. And what the right spiritual effort now is that depends on where you are with yourself. It might mean that you have to do some pranayama to calm your mind, or to strengthen your nervous system. It can be that you actually focus, that you do a visualization to give up your hopes and dreams up to God, to the inner light. It can be anything. That's for each individual to decide. But the right spiritual effort now. And then you develop faith, and you get a friendly relationship also with the future. And the friendly relationship with the future and with the past means that you're at peace in the here and now, in the present. So what I also do to improve my relationship with the future is to realize that time goes on, and at a certain point, I'm going to die, and that is certain, at least. I think so. Statistically speaking, it's certain. I only know of one guy who never died, and he's one of our masters. But for all the other 7 billion people, I'm not quite sure. In any case, I make that part of my consciousness. And so I say, okay, I don't want it to be painful. I don't want it to be painful physically. I don't want it to be painful mentally, just the intense sadness that I have to leave everything that is dear to me, everything that I thought I am, that I think I am now, and the dear people and the house and the atmospheres and all the beauties of this world, because this world is full of beauty. At least for me, it is. And so I try to then sort of use the techniques to imagine that I'm already dying, and everyone can do it. You can be creative in your use of the techniques, of course, But for example, Hong Sau, if it is to take you to breathlessness, which Master says it is, then why not try to do that? Use it more often, use it better. Give your Hong Sau practice a real boost, motivated by the fact that you want to make death a part of your joyful soul awareness, So these things help me. So the right spiritual effort now and meditation on death, which Swami calls the final exam. Usually teenagers think they are immortal. That's how they treat their bodies accordingly, at least I did. And then you get a little older. Most people stop smoking when they're by their 30s, I think. Most people do. If they don't, there's something wrong, I would say. And then it goes on, and then you hit 60, and you start thinking more about death, and that's a good thing. But it is very spiritually helpful to think about death also when you're in your early 20s, because that is, as Swami calls it, life's final exam. So he says to us, Master said to Swami, but he's also saying it to us, you must go to the end of life, and death itself is the final sacrifice that we have to make for our oneness with God. It's good to remember that. Okay, now a few hints on how to deal with the present. One thing that helps you to stay in the present is concentration, because concentration kills time. I remember I was working in an office, and it was in Amsterdam. I was young, and it was such a boring job. It was so incredibly boring. It was a notary's office, and I had to do paperwork. I don't even remember what it was. And I was finished with it, and I still had another half an hour where I had nothing to do, and I had to stay because, I couldn't leave just because I was finished. We are not at that point yet with our development that people can just, we still have too many programs, schedules, and forms for that. Anyway. So I was watching at the clock, and I was watching at the clock every minute, and it just never went by time. It's just horrible, and I was waiting there. But then there was another experience when I was serving Master in Rome, where I co-founded the Ananda Rome Center there. We once invited Jayadev over to lead a 5-hour Christmas meditation. We all thought we were very, concerned about our members, that maybe 8 hours would be too long. So I said, let's do 5 hours, and let's invite a minister from Ananda. And so Jayadev came, and we had prepared the whole schedule, like, 10 minutes chanting, and then 30 minutes silence and other songs, and then listening to the Master. And Jayadev came with his guitar. He played a few songs, and then he kept silence for 4 hours. I think, and then after 4 hours, he did a little song, and he said, just continue, because if you concentrate, time doesn't exist. So on the one, it was a pretty strong lesson for the people present there. It was a very good lesson for me, in any case, because I already realized that, but I sort of appreciated the no-nonsense attitude with which he came, We thought we were being, concerned and caring, and he came with his no-nonsense attitude and his guitar. So, and then the other thing, just to finish, you look at the passage that Swami quotes from the Bhagavad Gita, and the passage that Uma quoted from the reading as she guided us into meditation. The harvest is already white. The fields are already white to harvest. Just look up. So every time when you give yourself the touch of light, and do it often, just take a break from time. Just, stay like this. You can do that at any time. I'm not going to tell you how much it takes, because then we're back in time again. But you just do it. Give yourself a touch of light. And also, you can actually read this passage from Krishna, where he describes the right attitude, the right posture, the asana, and then includes the eyes in that. That's very interesting. You don't think the physical eyes, are they part of the asana, the posture, yoga posture? Yes, they are. You look up. And what I have found by myself spontaneously, and then later I found confirmation, is that when you meditate, you don't actually really close your eyes. I think you relax them, and then they go a little bit. When I sleep, I really close my eyes. When I look up, my eyelids, what is this called? Eyelids are moving, because I'm not in samadhi, but I can look up and then focus here, and then the eyes sort of stay half open. And that is a very natural thing to do for when you meditate. You can try that. You can experiment with that. And then also, at last, to finish, the spiritual eye is governed by the sun. Okay. Now, all these chakras, when you read Swami Kriyananda's Raja Yoga, he speaks about the anatomy of yoga. And those chakras are all governed by planets. Saturn, the first chakra, Jupiter, the second, Mars, the third chakra, Venus, the fourth, and Mercury, the fifth, and then the moon, the medulla. And here, the sun. Now, when you think of it, those planets are all moving around the sun, right? And their orbit is measured in time. For example, Jupiter takes 12 years to make one orbit around the sun, and Saturn 28 or 29 years. So the movement they make creates time, right? But the sun, well, the sun moves too, but that is not pertinent for now what I'm trying to say. But the sun is at the center of it all. It's right here. So when you go deep, when you go to the center of reality, and you can meditate also on the sun, for example, but in any case, meditate on the spiritual eye. When you go to the center of everything and you go deep, then time disappears. And you leave the time to all the planets, but you are right here, focused right here, with your deep spiritual enthusiasm. That comes. Make your enthusiasm deep and follow your deepest joy. If you do that, then time will be no longer an issue for you. Thank you all. Jai Guru. Namaste.